What do you think elites believe is the secret to living forever?
Okay, so the elites are actually obsessed with living forever, and there are different reasons why this is the case. Some have speculated that it's because they in their hearts know all the evil they've done, so they're afraid of like the reckoning when they face God. Um, they're afraid of take being held accountable for their actions. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is they're just really happy with the life they have here. So they want to maintain that. They're afraid of like when they die, they lose everything. So I think both are possibilities. But I think that the body is not the secret to eternal life. So you look at someone like Peter Attia. I'm not sure if you've seen his work. But he talks about how to live longer and healthier, right? He's very expensive. I mean, he'll charge someone I think $100,000 a year just to consult on how to um, live a lifestyle that allows for maximum health in the long term. Okay, so people like Peter Attia, you have people like Brian Johnson, who is trying to live for as long as he can. There's a lot of money put into longevity research, but I think it's all the wrong approach. I think the secret is not the body, the secret is the mind, right? So I go back to Donald Trump because he's a very interesting case study for me, where we've never had someone who's been able to capture global attention for so long, right? Before, you might be famous in your community, but that was it. But now with movies, with the internet, with digitalization, Donald Trump lives rent free in the minds of billions of people. There are people who like literally wake up every morning and they're like, "Oh, what is Donald Trump doing today?" So they go online and they read the news. They are fascinated with this guy. They think about him all the time. And so we've never had a time when so many people were focused on one person. And my question is, will Donald Trump ever die? Because I understand, yes, he eats McDonald's every single day. I understand he is fat and old, but we never had a situation where the entire world is focused on every second the speech, the movement of one person. You just look at how he spends his day. It's always with the press, right? It's always either on Truth Social or giving a press conference or talking to a reporter. It's amazing how reporters in Washington, D.C. are like, oh my God, I can call up the President of the United States and he'll talk to me for an hour. It's like literally like any journalist in Washington, D.C. could do this. You can get his phone number and he's the President of the United States and call him up and he'll tell you, his thinking and all that. So it's a very strange situation. And you ask yourself, why is he doing that? Well, I think he's doing that because he craves the attention, because he wants to live in the consciousness of the whole world. And we've never had someone like that before, right? So let's go back to the idea that consciousness is creation of reality. But what this means is that we create our own individual reality naturally. Okay? But if we all have Donald Trump in our minds, then Donald Trump becomes the convergence of all individual realities on planet Earth. And this convergence is what we call God. So is it possible that by constantly thinking about Donald Trump all the time, by giving him our psychic attention, are we basically manifesting God into Donald Trump so that his consciousness becomes eternal, locked in, because we make it eternal, because we cannot perceive or imagine or desire a world without him. There's a certain addiction to Donald Trump today, right? Remember how boring Joe Biden was? Right? We had Donald Trump and we was like, oh my God, please go away. I don't want to think about you anymore. Then we had Joe Biden, like, no one remembers what happened during Joe Biden, right? And now with Donald Trump, which is like, we're back to constantly fretting about the world, constantly cursing him. We're constantly thinking about him, giving him all our attention. And my question is, will he die? And I fear that he won't die. I think that's a secret to longevity, where you are able to implant yourself in the consciousnesses of so many people that their consciousness creates a reality in which you can inhabit forever.
It's really fascinating. If you look at the history of memes, I think it was Richard Dawkins that had proposed like memetics in the first place. And Trump is the greatest meme of all time. And you know this because what was the biggest meme coin? Trump coin. So it signals, I don't know, it's what really gives a god power when you think about it. Do you think the answer is just attention, your active consciousness?
Yes. He's a psychic demon, okay? And you feed a psychic demon through intense emotions. And there's so many intense emotions surrounding Donald Trump. People either hate him or love him. He doesn't care because it's all emotions that empowers him, right? For him, hate, love is the same thing. So again, this is a thought experiment, but the question is he gonna die? Because he's not gonna go away, okay? As long as he can stay in that office, he's not gonna die. And like, quite honestly, there's no way to get rid of him now.
Do you think the elite believe they're from sacred bloodlines?
Oh, absolutely.
Is it all the one bloodline, or is it like multiple bloodlines?
Yeah, they say 13 bloodlines. So, I mean, I think it's this game theory where you're born into power and privilege. And you go to places like Andover, Yale, Harvard Law School, and you meet people who are smarter than you are. So how can you explain to yourself why you're more powerful than these people? And the answer is, my blood is better. My blood is purer. I have dragon blood. I have divine blood from Hercules, from Achilles, from Alexander the Great. That's why I should rule the world. Because I'm not going to give up my position. I'm not going to admit that this other guy is better than I am. I should rule. And the best explanation for why I should rule is because I've always ruled. Because I'm a reincarnation of a divine being on earth. Right? And that's something that Jeffrey Epstein believed.
That's a fascinating one. I'm sure you could look at the history of like these Ancestry.coms and 23andMe's, and I'm sure it's strange. But because how else would you determine the bloodline without the DNA test?
And you shouldn't actually participate in any of those things.
Why?
Because a conspiracy theory, okay, I'll just throw this out there, okay? But a conspiracy theory is that they want certain bloodlines, and they use these websites to find certain bloodlines.
So if you're in that bloodline,
bad things could happen to you. Why is there so much human trafficking in the United States? They care a lot about bloodlines, right? So if they believe that they are of divine bloodline, they would also want to prevent others of divine bloodline from accessing power, right? They would want to step out other bloodlines. They could also drink the blood of other bloodlines to increase their own bloodline. Again, this is a conspiracy theory. I have no evidence this is the case. But if you were to actually examine how these people think, and these people are like insane, this makes sense.
So what bloodline would you have to be for them to? Would you have to be of that 13 families, or would you be of just not that?
So I think that it depends on the group that you're in. I think there's something called the 13 bloodlines, which traces themselves back to the Roman Empire, basically. But then you have the Sapientine Francus, who are maybe about a few hundred families. And Jeffrey Epstein was of the bloodline of the Sapientine Francus. So there's overlap, but there's also some distinctions. So, honestly, I have not done that much research into these bloodlines because I think it's not really helpful. I'm more interested in ideas. Because these people aren't that smart, and their behavior is sort of preordained. You know exactly how they will behave. I'm much more interested in people like Donald Trump, who, regardless of what you think about him, he actually has an imagination. He actually
has a connection to the divine, perhaps.
He thinks he does, yeah. And he probably does. Yeah.
Yeah, something I found fascinating from our conversation yesterday when we'd had a chat was that you have a belief that there isn't like one most powerful person in the world.
Yeah.
And that logics out to me. And it also logics out to me that we'd be allowed to say it because the person who thinks they're the most powerful in the world would want us to say their name.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly right.
And the person, I don't think anyone wouldn't want us to say their name. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
So I mean, they say like these secret societies are promoted by secret societies, right? So go back to the example of the Illuminati. Okay, so the Illuminati was founded at the end of the 18th century by Adam Weishaupt, who was formerly a Jesuit, and the Jesuits are crypto Jews, and he aligned with Jacob Frank and Mayer Rothschild, and they formed the Illuminati. And whenever you form a secret society, okay, your major problem is actually recruitment. How do you get people to join your organization? And Adam Weishaupt was able to grow the Illuminati because he was a master media manipulator. Okay, so he created the myth that there are these people who are seeking to conquer the world, and they're infiltrated throughout Europe in all the major noble lineages, and they've infiltrated the Freemasons as well, and they're conspiring to overthrow these dynasties of Europe, right? And so he was the one who was promoting this myth, because if you're just this average Joe and you read about these guys, you're like, this is actually pretty cool. Yeah, I should join these guys, and it gives him much more political leverage, right? So that's what people don't really appreciate about the Illuminati. It's actually more of a PR campaign than it is actually a powerful force in the world. But again, remember, this goes back to Donald Trump and Plato's Cave. Consciousness is reality itself. If you can make enough people believe this to be true, it becomes true.
you've talked about various secret societies. You've talked about various psyops. Made different predictions about the system. Is there anything that you, Professor Zhang, aren't allowed to say?
I think that if you refer to certain individuals and their actions, they would come after you. Because as long as you're talking the abstract, like, okay, this is how secret societies rule the world, that's fine. They don't care. No one cares. If you talk about how Jeffrey Epstein is connected to this person, and it's this person that financed certain parts of his behavior, this would create problems for him, and then he would come create problems for you. So I think naming names, going into specifics is a problem. Another problem is, let's just say I had access to confidential information that someone shared with me, and I were to reveal that to you. Well, that would be a problem, because then I would have betrayed that person.
Right.
And I don't do that because I don't know any powerful people, and no one's ever told me any secrets, right? So a lot of things I do is based on speculation, based on analysis, and no one cares if you do that. But again, if you name someone powerful and you reveal certain of his behavior that can be that can be used as legal evidence against him, that can cause for incrimination against him, that would be a problem. If you had information revealed to you by a confidential source, and you were to reveal this confidential information to other people and make it public, that would set you up for retribution as well. So I would say these two things.
Most of your critics say that what you're doing is technically illegal in your home country, and the only reason you haven't gotten in trouble is because you're a CCP asset or a CIA asset or an MI6 asset. Professor Zhang, are you a spy?
Okay, sure. So let me respond to the question, how am I allowed to do what I do in China? And the reason is that I'm actually not part of the Chinese system. So the Chinese system is set up to control the behavior of Chinese citizens. And so it's a very complicated bureaucracy. I'm not a Chinese citizen. I'm not a participant in the Chinese system. I'm a foreigner hired to teach English at a private school. That's my identity. That's my role in China. And foreigners are given a lot of leeway in China. Like, we operate in a gray zone where we don't really matter and we're sort of like tolerated, but we don't really matter, okay? And so an example of this is if you have a Chinese ID, then you're part of the Chinese AI surveillance grid, meaning that everything that you say is monitored, everything that you do is monitored. When you use any Chinese payment system, that information is always stored online, and the database is constructed to profile you, okay? But it's a system designed for Chinese citizens. And why you do that is you're not interested in individual behavior, you're interested in collective behavior. So you're trying to figure out this person's social network. And then you can profile this social network and then use mechanisms to manipulate that social network, okay? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay? In other words, I don't matter. I'm not part of the system. Whatever I do does not impact how the system is run and managed. Okay, the system is meant to control the people internal to China, not external to it. China has absolutely no desire to conquer the world because it'd be a pain in the ass, right? That's a lot. That's why I'm allowed to do what I do. As long as I'm not on social media in China, as long as I do not do public speeches in China, as long as I don't talk to Chinese reporters, I don't matter in the system. Okay? But the moment, okay, and this is a caveat, the moment I decide, you know what, I want to be famous in China. I want to set up a social media account. I want to give speeches and generate income. Now I'm a problem, right? So I make that distinction where I choose freedom, but I also choose not to engage in lucrative opportunities in China. But if I were to engage in lucrative opportunities, then I would be expected to say certain things that promote the party line in the world and in China.
Like if you saw an American influencer, perhaps, speaking Chinese to a classroom of American students, and they were talking about the topics you're talking about, but like for China, like what would you think that is going on?
I would have absolutely no idea what's going on. I'd be like, first of all, who is this guy and where's he getting his information? Second of all, I'd be like, why is he allowed to teach his stuff to students? I mean, like, doesn't he have a supervisor? Isn't there like a high school principal that oversees the curriculum? And then third of all, it's like, what motivates this guy? Why is he doing what he's doing? Because like, this is not going to help kids get into college. It's not going to help them do well on the SAT. This is all just silly. I would have absolutely no idea what's going on. I'd be completely confused. I'd be flabbergasted by this guy. I would have absolutely no idea who he is. I would not know why he's doing what he's doing. And I'd be confused as to how he's able to get away with this crap.
And do you feel like your answers so far have answered that pretty fully?
If you just go in my history, I do all sorts of strange things. People who know me aren't surprised by what I do. They're surprised by how famous I've become, but they're not surprised by what I do. I'm just a strange guy, right? Because I went to Yale, and I come to China, and I spend my entire life here just teaching, and I'm like impoverished as compared to my Yale classmates, right? Who've become lawyers and doctors and who live very respectable lives on the Upper West Side in New York. So when I first got into Yale, all my cousins hated me because now they're under pressure to get in the Ivy League as well. And then like 10 years later, I hear a story of how my cousin got into a fight with his mother. And his mother said to him, you have to work harder because you want to be like Uncle Jiang and get into Yale. And then the cousin was like, yeah, Mom, but he went back to China. And that ended the conversation. I was never mentioned again in that household. So I mean, my relatives, my family is shocked by how strange I am. Like, you go to Yale, like you win the lottery, and you decide, you know what, I'm gonna just fall away and go to a place where my Yale degree doesn't really matter, where I can't become a doctor or a lawyer. I can only become a high school teacher. So I'm just a strange person in general. And then, in 2008, I built China's first public school international program to send Chinese kids to America for college. And at that time, this was a new field, and everyone knew it was like a rocket ship. I could become a millionaire just helping Chinese kids apply to university. And a lot of people did become millionaires. But after a couple of years of doing that, I walked away because I didn't want to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't want to become a business person. I didn't want to make millions of dollars getting rich kids into Yale and Harvard. I walked away. I worked for the United Nations in 2006. And look, when you work for the United Nations, it is the cushiest, easiest life anyone can live, okay? It is the silliest thing ever to exist. But like, I literally was making 6 figures doing nothing every day, just sitting in my office and pretending to type on a keyboard. And if I had a family, every one of my kids would be given free international schooling. If I flew around, it'd be business class. I'd be given a pension after 10, 20 years, a full pension. I was treated like royalty wherever I went because I'm the United Nations. And I walked away because I thought it was a meaningless existence. So I'm often confused by myself. People think, my friends tell me, they don't understand why I do what I do. So it's led me to this point. And again, like my friends are not surprised by what I do, which is, teach conspiracy theories in high school. Like, that's just part of my personality. But they're kind of surprised by, I have like 2 million followers right now on YouTube, right? They're kind of surprised by that. It's like, whoa. And like, these are Yale, Harvard people, right? So they're very conservative. They have a very rigid worldview. And they don't understand how I'm able to teach this and be so popular in the world.
Did you manifest this?
That's a really good question. The short answer is yes. But the real answer is I imagine this possibility, right? But the thing though is that I am a writer by training. Like, I write books, and so I imagine things all the time. And I imagine that this could be a possibility one day. And I position myself, I maneuver myself into this position. So 5 years ago, during COVID, I was so upset about COVID. It really annoyed me how the entire world just shut off its brain, right? Just like, okay, well, this vaccine, well, we don't know if it works, but some scientists said it works, so it must work, so I'll just put it in my body and hope for the best. It was just insane to me. Now, I've been fascinated by social media, by the internet. So I was watching a lot of Joe Rogan. I was watching a lot of Jimmy Dore. I was watching a lot of alternative media. And I became drawn to alternative media because, like, I like debate, I like conversation, I like exploration. And it seemed to me like people like Jimmy Dore, Joe Rogan, Brett and Eric Weinstein, Tucker Carlson, these were people that were trying to seek the truth, that were really questioning the world. And I was like, I would one day like to be on the show. I feel that's the direction I could go. And so then I asked myself, okay, if I want to be like them, because only by being like them can I appear on the show, right? Then they're not gonna like ask a random high school teacher to be on their show. What can I do that makes me so distinct that I might be popular on social media? And my solution was, I'm gonna make some stupid predictions and hope they turn out correct. And if they aren't correct, I'm going to be a laughing stock for the rest of my life. But if they are correct, then I might get on Tucker Carlson, right? So that was my strategy and planning when I started the YouTube channel. It sounds so silly, right?
Are you telling me that you didn't believe those predictions?
So I believe my predictions. I believe it would turn out the way they did very strongly. Because remember, I had to, first of all, explain my predictions and justify my predictions. But I also tape myself and put it on YouTube, right? Which means that now there's a historical record that I made these predictions. And I would only do that if I truly believed in them. But what happened was that for the past 5-6 years, I was having conversations with friends. And we'd have these silly arguments about geopolitics. Like, we argued about who the Democratic nominee would be in 2020. And I was like, why are we having this stupid argument? It's going to be Joe Biden, okay? And like there was a lot of pushback and says, no, it's going to be Pete Buttigieg. It's going to be Kamala Harris because we want a younger candidate. And I'm like, it doesn't matter what you want. It matters how the world works. And Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. I also predicted that Trump would win in 2020 and beat Joe Biden. And then there was talk of Putin invading Ukraine, attacking Ukraine. And my friends were like, it's not going to happen. There's no way. It's too dangerous. And Putin would lose. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so silly. This is all obviously going to happen. And for whatever reason, all my friends believe the complete opposite. And I can't talk to my friends anymore. It's just pointless. These are Yale, Harvard people who are supposed to be like some of the smartest people in the world. And they have like these thick skulls. And like it's almost impossible to relay obvious reality to them. So screw this. I'm gonna make my own YouTube channel and just speak my heart, basically.
Do you think the reason you're able to nail some of these predictions is because you went into Yale as a poor kid and just saw how these rich, like elite, that type of consciousness, that group identity, like how they behave and how they win games, and like you were just able to see it for what it is, and they're so stuck inside of it that they can't see it, they're too biased?
Okay, so the thing about Yale is when you're a poor kid and you get in a place like Yale, which is like, I mean, the height of elite power, okay? You're traumatized by the event. All my time at Yale, I felt like an imposter, like I don't really belong here. And you're traumatized by the alienation because you don't belong here because you're not rich, and they don't actually want to talk to you. And so Yale was an alienating and traumatic experience for me. And when that happens, you disassociate, right? So I wasn't actually observing how power works because I was never invited to their parties anyway, and I was not friends with them. So I didn't understand how power works. And so I developed a very naive understanding of the world, which was that the world was a meritocracy, which is like the best ideas will always win out. So it didn't matter if I didn't have any friends. It didn't matter if I didn't have any money. It didn't matter if I didn't have any connections. All it mattered was if I just did the best job possible, whatever I did, I'd be successful. And that was my understanding leaving Yale. And so I go out into the world and I try many different things. I tried being a journalist. I tried being a documentary filmmaker. And no matter what I did, it was failure after failure. And I didn't think that the people who were my colleagues in these industries were necessarily better than I was. And I was sort of surprised by this. And I became very angry at myself for not succeeding. Because I thought the entire point of going to Yale was to be successful, and I was not succeeding. So I became very anxious. I became very depressed. And for many years, I sunk into a deep depression. And no matter what I did, I couldn't escape my depression. And then in 2008, I got a job building and managing China's first public school study abroad program. And that's successful. But the process of building the program left me traumatized because I spent my entire heart and soul into building a program to validate myself. And I couldn't control myself emotionally. And I got into a fight with my boss, and so he fired me, or I quit, whatever, you know. But after that, I was like, clearly there's something wrong with me. Clearly, I need to think about who I am, how I got to this point, and how I can improve myself. So I wrote an article at that time called Three Things Yale Didn't Teach Me. And I listed three fundamental problems with my education, my own psychology. And the first problem is I thought that IQ was the end all and be all. So if you're able to articulate yourself clearly, if you're able to do math, well, you should be president of the United States. Whereas if you are not able to articulate clearly, then you should be a janitor. Okay, so I saw the world through the lens of IQ. I didn't appreciate that the world was much more diverse than I uh, believed. That's the first issue. Second issue is I believe the world was a zero-sum competition. So I'm on YouTube, and so I need to have the most YouTube views, have the most YouTube subscribers. Otherwise, I'm nothing. And so I saw everyone as a competitor. I couldn't take pleasure in the pleasure of others. When others were happy, I became very unhappy because like, why were they happier than I was? Okay, so I saw the world through that lens. And the third problem is I saw failure not as an opportunity to grow and to learn, but as a testament to my own deficiencies. So I was afraid to fail. I didn't want to lose. It was the most traumatic experience to fail and to lose. And so I recognized that these three things were setting me back. And I needed to reinvent myself. I needed to die, basically. I needed to kill myself. And so what I did was this. I redesigned my Yale education. Right? At Yale, you just went to school with the best and the brightest. You were taught by professors who were eloquent, who were very scholarly. And so I said, I'm going to throw myself into the world. I'm going to interact with ordinary people and do ordinary things. Right? So I signed up for cooking school. And the first day I go to cooking school, I manifested myself that, oh, in a year's time, I will be the world's greatest chef. Because my classmates don't know Shakespeare. They never went to Yale, whereas I did. So I'm superior to them. Okay, so at the end of this year, my ambition is I'm gonna have my own restaurant empire. I'm gonna have like 1,000 restaurants all around the world. I'm gonna have my own TV show, and I'll be the best cook in the world. Okay, and of course, I was a complete disaster in the kitchen. I didn't know anything, and I was like the worst student in the class. And these are like vocational kids, by the way. They were like 18, 19. They were working as like short order cooks in a airport bar. They were coming at night to take this class because they loved cooking. There was a passion. And so at the end of each class, when you cook three dishes, you present it to the chef. And then the chef would give it a grade. And I was so bad that the chef would not even touch my dishes. He'd be like, I'm not eating this crap. Go away, man. And I was like, what is wrong with you people? Don't you people know I went to Yale? Like, what is wrong with you idiots? But I was just a disaster as a cooking student. It was complete humiliation, but it taught me that the world isn't the way you think it is. So I need to re-examine my own values. I also took Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a weird sport because you don't know anything. And what they do is they beat you up for a year. You know, you go and you're like, oh, hey, we're going to roll. And you're like, okay, so are we going to train? No, someone's going to come and beat you up for a year. And that's what happened. And like every day after class, I just go home and cry because I remembered when I was a student in Toronto, like in primary school and in junior high school. And every day I get beat up by bullies, and I go home and cry. And something was happening to me again, taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The difference, of course, is like now I'm paying good money to get beaten up and bullied and cry. I did stand-up comedy, and stand-up comedy was a revelation because all my entire life I was afraid of being laughed at. Like I had to like prove myself. And when I got up on the stage and I told jokes, and people actually thought it was funny, um, I recognized that when they laugh, that made me feel good about myself. It made me feel good to be vulnerable, to expose myself, to humiliate myself in front of others. Bring them happiness brought me happiness. And so that was a revelation. And so I also learned not to take myself too seriously. Like the healthiest thing is just to be able to laugh at yourself. I did rock climbing. And rock climbing was also really important because rock climbing, it's a social thing. It's not a competition. And at first, when people in the gym were able to do much harder climbs than I was kind of like angry and jealous. But whenever I tried a hard climb and people around me were cheering me on, I recognized that, wow, if they can cheer me on, why can't I cheer them on? If they were able to find happiness in my success, why can't I find happiness in their success? I did skydiving for a few months. Don't do that. Like, this is the dumbest thing you can do, okay? Those guys were on drugs, right? Yeah, it was just dumb. And like, but I was trying different things. So skydiving was, yeah, just don't try that. They're all on drugs and they're all assholes. And yeah, I tried everything. I tried singing, because I was tone deaf, and I spent like $10,000 so that I can sing some notes like oh, something like that. I can't sing, okay, but like it was just a lot of money. And every day, my teacher was just shouting at me and saying, "You're an idiot. You can't, sing." And that was also a humiliating experience that taught me to be much more to have much more empathy in life. And so that experience was very transformative because I recognized that education is not about going to the best schools and getting the best grades. It was really about taking risk, trying new things, and engaging in a process of self-reflection. And it was really about humility, empathy, resilience. And that taught me to be a better teacher as well as a better person. And the great thing about that experience is that it didn't really save me from my anxiety, from my depression, but it opened my heart to the possibility of being saved, in that I felt that I'm now worthy of being saved. I'm now worthy of sharing my life with another person. Whereas before I was afraid. And so I was able to let go of my ego and fear. And so I even today I tell people, like, your two greatest enemies are ego and fear. Your belief that you're alone in the universe, and your belief that you will fail. So having let go of my ego and fear, now I've opened up my heart. I was able to find the love of my life.
Something I'd asked you last night was, what was the moment that you noticed everything was an illusion? Like, what was the moment that you could see past the veil and see that all this was fake?
Yeah, so I met my wife 10 years ago. And at first I didn't want to start a relationship because I had hit rock bottom. I had no money because I spent it all on skydiving. I was unemployed. I didn't have a house. I was actually working for rent. And just by accident, I met my wife.
Where'd you meet her?
I was helping out a college program, and she was also part of the team. And she saw something in me, and so she wanted to date me. So she took the initiative. and I was kind of indifferent. But we went out a few times, and we just connected. We just clicked, and we were able to be intimate with each other. And so one thing led to another, and then we were married. We had our first child. Now we have 3 kids. And throughout this time, I was afraid that this was just an illusion, that this was not real, that she'll eventually wake up and say, "Oh my God, why am I dating an unemployed, middle-aged man who might be gay? Why am I doing that?" But she never left me, and we've been together ever since. And it feels as though we were just meant to be together. It was meant. I feel as though we're like soulmates, like we're two sparks drifting in the universe, and we wanted to find each other. And so we were able to somehow navigate the messiness of this world, navigate the chaos, and somehow find each other, because we were looking for each other all this time. Like that's literally how I feel about her. And she saved my life. She transformed my life, and she was able to bring structure and purpose and meaning to my life when none existed before. Before I was like, I just want to succeed. I don't know why I want to succeed, but I want to succeed. Now it's like I don't need to succeed. Now I just need to take care of my family. Now I just need to be a good role model to my kids. Now I just need to spend as much time as possible with my family and enjoy my time here with my family. And just having that spirit, just by letting go, just by seeing the world as an illusion, seeing that success means nothing. It's family that matters. Strangely enough, I became much more creative. I wrote a book that was published in China. I wrote a series of science fiction novels. It was just a time of tremendous creative output. And I started to teach. And when I teach, I was not interested in just teaching English. I wanted to be a role model to my kids. I wanted to be able to teach my kids. And so I started to teach the great books: Homer, Dante, Plato, Immanuel Kant. And I had very little exposure to a lot of these books. And so I set myself on learning them as much as possible. And at first, it was kind of okay because you can always watch YouTube videos and just imitate them, these professors who teach Plato and Homer. But then I got into Dante. And for 6 months, I was watching these YouTube videos about Dante and the Divine Comedy. I had no idea what they were saying. I was so confused. I was reading the Divine Comedy like every single day because I really wanted to master it, and I had no idea what I was reading. I was just so lost. I was so frustrated. And so I went to sleep one day, and I woke up, and I felt as though Dante had spoken to me. And his word was love. Focus on love. That's what the Divine Comedy is about, love. And so I started to reread it again, and then things started to unpack themselves, slowly reveal themselves before me. And it wasn't at once, but it was like as though before I just saw gray, and now I'm able to see color, slowly, piece by piece. And then I recognized something, which is the universe is divine. The universe is alive. The universe is conscious. And if you have the faith, if you have the love in your heart, it will speak back to you. It will guide you. It will lead you to the light. But first, you have to open yourself to love. Love is the great secret of the universe.
Right. Professor Zhang, you've spent your life studying how powerful people enslave the weak. You know how war, religion, and debt are used to create fear and give them control. If all your lectures were deleted, every book, every article erased from history, what's the one truth about humans you would leave to the world?
Look, if tomorrow, for whatever reason, all my lectures were deleted, it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't matter, because I feel as though I've ignited a spark in a lot of people. It's a spark that compels them to seek the truth for themselves. So these videos are not meant to be the truth. They're not meant to be the Bible. They're not meant to be scripture. They're just meant to be a way to inspire you to seek your own truth. And I think there's a global awakening happening. I think I've started a movement of sorts. I come to Hong Kong, and it's amazing how a lot of people recognize me, and they come up to me and tell me how much they love my lectures. And I was at breakfast this morning, my hotel, and one of the hotel staff, this young Filipino lady, and I would expect this is like the last person to watch my videos, right? As I was getting to leave, she said to me, "Goodbye, Professor Diao." So she recognized me. And like this is a, Filipino lady working as a waitress in a hotel in Hong Kong. So it's amazing the impact I've had already. And I think that once you ignite that spark in people, it changes just the entire way they see the world. You can never go back.
I guess what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Don't chase pussy. So I'll tell you a story where I was a young teacher, aspiring journalist in Beijing. This is about the year 1999, and I had just graduated from Yale. This is the autumn. And a journalist friend calls me and says, "So there's this famous American writer, Gay Talese. You probably haven't heard of him. He's like 94 this year, okay? He's a very famous writer. Probably like the last great living American writer.
Hmm.
He was off the Kurt Vonnegut, Tom Wolfe, David Hammerstein generation, and they're all dead. He's still alive. And I was his assistant for 6 months because he needed a translator. And so I followed him everywhere, and I was translating for him. And he saw me as a son. He saw me as a protege. He was very supportive, and we've stayed in touch all these decades. We email each other now and then. And the best advice he gave me, which still sticks in my mind, is don't chase pussy. Because, first of all, he's a very attractive man who's, had many relationships in the past. So the turning point in his life is he's married to a woman named Nan Talese, and she is a very famous editor at Random House. And in 1970s, they were walking in Times Square after dinner. Gay Talese goes out every single night, and he hangs out with like the most famous people in New York, like people like Truman Capote, George Plimpton. They're all like very good friends. And he got interested in a massage parlor, which was basically a brothel. And he went in, and this started his book called Thy Neighbor's Wife, which is looking at promiscuity in America. And to research the book, he participated in sex orgies in California. He became a brothel manager in New York. He participated in sex cults. So he did all that. The problem is that his wife, Nan Talese, would find out about this because every Sunday she'd read the New York Times, and there's an article about him having an orgy in California. And that sort of ruined their marriage, as you can imagine. They're still married, actually. It's really interesting how they're still married after all that. And this was like 1970s, by the way. So that's just the power of love. But I would not want to do what he did. I would not want to participate in a sex cult, or start a sex cult, by the way. And then have my wife find about it online because some guy, some YouTuber made a video about it You know. So yeah, don't chase pussy.
Hmm. And then I guess I'll just add this at the end. If you could recommend one book to everyone, what would it be?
Well, I mean, The Divine Comedy is the greatest book ever written. It is literally um, a word from God. So Dante was channeling the universe when he wrote that. So that's the one book that everyone must read. Um, but it's really hard. I spent a lot of time researching it, and I'm still trying to decipher its full meaning because it's so intense. It's truth itself embedded in the poetry. But if people are just looking to read a really good book, then it has to be Homer's The Iliad.
Hmm.
I've taught that many times, and it's amazing how these high school students in China who have absolutely no exposure to Western culture and who themselves don't actually speak that good English, they just love the Iliad. Even today, many years later, they still rave about the Iliad. And it just stays with you. It's easy, it's an easy read. It's a long read, but it's an easy read. It's a fun read as well. And it just forever transforms you. So the Iliad.
Beautiful. Well, everyone, this has been your guest, Professor Zhang. This is the Jack Neal Podcast. Where can people find you?
I happen to be everywhere now, so it's pretty easy to find me. But the best place is my YouTube channel, Predictive History.
Right.
Yeah.
You also have a Substack as well.
Right. So if you're interested in geopolitics, because I write about current events and try to put it in a larger structural lens, my Substack is predictivehistory.substack.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for inviting me, Jack.